Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. This is going to be episode number 231. It's another on-location podcast from Sonora, Mexico. I actually just got back last night from our guided hunts down in Sonora, Mexico, and Darr Colburn, my partner, Hunter Haynes, Seth, Meeske, and myself have a great discussion down there after a couple days of our second hunt. We had some awesome bucks that were harvested, not only on our fully guided ranches, on our do-it-yourself ranches as well. And the biggest buck of the season so far is a 141-inch buck shot by Daniel Franco. His business partner with Burnt Timber Outfitters, Mike Hancock, shot a 121-inch buck. They also had a 116-inch buck and a handful of bucks between 100 and 110. The best buck on our second trip, on our guided trip, was a 115 buck. Craig Dunlap shot a real nice framed 3x3 with a 7-inch extra eye guard. Just a really neat buck. And we had Kelly Cox and his guys with iVideo Wildlife group from Utah. They got a handful of good bucks, and just bucks pictures are starting to come in from all the different leases that we've got down there. And Hunter Haynes and I were actually able to stay for a couple days and look at a couple new ranches. And Hunter was able to shoot two great bucks in one day. He shot a 3x3 with 5.5 to 6-inch eye guards, bladed eye guards, big, nice 3x3, typical buck. And then the night before, I had glassed up a big 4x4. What I thought was a 4x4 turned out to be a inline 5x4. For those of you that count eye guards, it's actually a 6x5 inline. So inline 5 plus an eye guard on his right side, just a beautiful buck. And Hunter's been wanting to crack that 120-inch mark, and he shot that big inline 5, and that buck should make that mark. And the other buck's a phenomenal buck as well. So overall, it's a great season down in Mexico. We're still waiting for a couple of groups to get back and see how they did. This episode is going to be kind of a roundtable discussion. You're going to get to hear from Hunter Haynes and Seth Meeske, who guide for us down in Mexico, and a real great story from Seth Meeske, a highway patrolman a couple years ago, was shot in the line of duty, and he's going to tell us that story. It's pretty cool to hear him tell it. Also, guys, I want to thank the sponsors of this podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com Insider for their sponsorship, and if you use the J. Scott promo code when signing up, they'll give you a $50 Coues gift card. Keep in mind that the Go Hunt Insider has released the Arizona draw odds. They're the most accurate odds, and all of you guys that have signed up, I've gotten a ton of feedback from you guys saying how much you really like using those exact odds when trying to put in for Arizona. They've also got the exact non-resident odds for New Mexico coming up here. I believe New Mexico is going to be due in April. So lots of good things going on over at Go Hunt Insider. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. Also, phonescope.com. Phonescope makes digiscoping adapters for your phone to any spotting scope or binocular. Use the JScott16 promo code and get 10% off on all products. Real Game Calls. Use the promo code JScott and get 20% off on all calls. You've heard the real authentic elk reel, and they are currently about to release the turkey reel and the buck reel. So go on and check those out at realgamecalls.com. And of course, the Optics Authority, the Outdoorsmans, use the JScott promo code and get 10% off on all products there at the Outdoorsmans. You can also call them at 1-800-291-8065. I want to thank them for their sponsorship. I want to thank you guys for your support of this podcast. I'd really appreciate getting emails from you. If you'd like to send me an email with comments, questions, or what have yous, you can send that to jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. Guys, I'm going to be at the Safari Club International convention coming up this coming week here in February. I will be at the convention on Thursday and Friday. If you plan on being at SCI, I'd love to meet up with you. You can either send me an email, send me an instant message, direct message through Instagram at JScottOutdoors, or a message on Facebook. I'd love to shake your hand if you are a listener. And we're going to be doing some podcasts from the Outdoorsman's booth. And be talking with a lot of the industry people there and whoever I come across. So that should be fun. Also, for you listening, I'm going to be at the National Wild Turkey Federation convention in Nashville, Tennessee. That's mid-February, and love to meet any of you guys out east that listen to my podcast. If you're going to be at NWTF, make sure to get a hold of me, and love to meet you, shake your hand, and say hi. And it's a great convention. Love going to NWTF. So, guys, let's get right to this podcast.
If it's gas, I feel bad for someone.
Darr's seen plenty of yellow cups on a table and knows not to drink those.
Oh my God!
By any means.
I've drank pee before. It's bad.
Did you actually drink it?
Yeah, my archery blind 2 years ago.
Oh, your own.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I've drank other people's spitters.
I did that one time.
That's real bad.
I'll tell you the story after the.
That's not a podcast story?
I don't know. Let's just say when you pee in your Gatorade bottle and you're sitting in your blind.
It doesn't. Doesn't taste like lemon lime.
Yeah.
And you forgot.
Would it make a difference whose it was?
No, yeah, but you think if you'd have peed in the bottle, you'd have remembered.
He pulled a Bear Grylls.
Oh, man.
Oh, heck, that's pretty good. Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. We are on location here in Sonora, Mexico. We are having a heck of a time down here during the rut in January. I think today is the 18th of January, and we started this second hunt down here in Sonora on the 15th, and planning on the 15th to the 23rd being our dates. And I think our weather overall, guys, has been pretty good, about how we want it. The deer seem to be rutting around. And before we get into that, I want to introduce who we've got here at the, we'll call it the square table, actually the rectangle here. We're in a ranch house. It's about 7:30 at night on the third night of the hunt. And joined here by my partner, Darr Colburn and Scott Outfitters. We've got our faithful companions here, other guides, Hunter Haynes. Like I said in the last podcast, the young back and muscle behind the Colburn and Scott team. By the way, ladies listening, I probably have about 3 ladies that listen total. He is on the look. He is on the market, and reminds me sometimes of some of these bucks that we see chasing around the ridges looking for girls. So,
oh Lord,
look him up, Hunt_Haynes on Instagram. Send him a message. He'd love to hear from you. We're also his face is bright red right now. So make sure 3 of you women that are listening that are single, make sure you're single. Look him up. We are also joined here by Seth Meeske. Seth became a friend of mine back in 2012 when Seth's dad, Ernie, had a sheep tag. And Unit 22, Desert Bighorn Sheep, met Seth and his dad, Ernie, and met a lot of his family. And we've just been fast friends ever since. We've enjoyed some fishing adventures and some other hunts, some sheep hunts. And Seth came down here last year with us to Mexico, and I think you fell in love with it, huh, bud?
I did. It's an incredible experience.
Yeah.
He's a big buck spotting sucker.
I know. Dang it. Yeah, he's.
That he is.
A quick story from last year. We were hunting a ranch. It was this same group, this same team. It was Hunter and Seth and Darr and I, and
I believe, Darr, you and I were off somewhere hunting on one part of the ranch, and Hunter and Seth were teamed up, and we each take a hunter and kind of go off and kind of work in teams. And these guys, you could hear them on the radio talking about a big buck and this, that, and the other, and forget all the details. Maybe the buck was rutting so hard, I think I remember he was just running around, that he came running up the ridge to you, Hunter. You had one of the hunters, and he came up, and you guys couldn't get a shot, and he took off running back down, and Seth was watching him. It was a Western deal.
Well, there was originally, the original buck that was spotted up there that we were trying to work him in on was a big buck.
Yeah.
And
was that the big typical?
That was the typical that Dean ended up killing.
Yeah.
Trying to get him worked in on that buck, and that buck was running all the does, and pretty soon he kind of stopped and bird dogged a bunch of oil trees, and that other buck came out and absolutely hammered him, knocked him over, rolled him, and that's when I got on the radio and told Hunter, you need to get up there. We've got a
Yeah, he calls me, and I'm like, where do I need to go? Bring a hunter over there, and I get up to the ridge, and I'm looking, right? And I'm like, Seth, and all of a sudden this big old deer comes out. I'm like, Seth, that's a giant. That's not no big deer. That's an absolute giant.
Didn't he come in close like he was running up the ridge?
So we had him on the other canyon, and there were some other little bucks. And I just remember the deer were probably only 300 yards from him, little canyon. And he just trying to plow little bucks, and he ended up coming about 40 yards from us. And I'm trying to get my hunter to shoot him, Western style. And deer kind of ventured off, never got a shot. But, yeah.
They were rutting hard.
He found the honey hole.
I never even got to put a scope on them. They were moving so fast, I couldn't even take my 15s off.
So he knocked the other buck flat over.
Nailed him. And the end of the story, when we ended up killing both of the buck, shot that big buck first, obviously, and put him down, and then looking in the same area to make sure he was down, and saw what we kind of assumed was him up with a broken back, moving, and we knew there was a good shot made on him. Anyhow, got to looking, and it was that first big buck, which ended up being 113.
Well, then walking out, remember, I found another deer that he probably could have killed. I mean, it was
he was a goring machine.
Yeah.
That buck was knocking bucks over.
And didn't the second buck, wasn't he limping really bad?
He was.
He was hurt bad.
Yeah.
He was hurt
from
real
you
bad.
think probably from that other buck beating him up?
Probably from that day he rolled him.
Yeah.
I mean, he hit him hard.
Yeah, so these deer, on the hoof, they're 110 pounds, give or take. Some are smaller, some are a little bit bigger, but they're vicious little suckers for sure. And we've been having a good time down here. We've got a great group of guys. We've got 2 deer shot and harvested. One of our hunters, Richard, just successfully completed his deer slam, shot his 5th deer. So that must be... What is that? The Sitka blacktail, a mule deer, a Coues deer,
Eastern whitetail.
Eastern
whitetail.
Texas? Or am I wrong?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him. I don't know if he's Columbia.
Maybe there's a coastal blacktail too.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, I think it's his fifth deer. He said it completed the deer slam, so he was excited. And then Jason, Epic Outdoors, gave a hunt away. They actually, after last season, Adam Bronson and Jason Carter called and said they wanted to book a hunt, and they paid full price for the hunt and booked that slot. And they just launched their magazine and application service on, I think December 1st, and the first magazine came out, what have you. But they did a drawing for anybody that was going to apply for their application service or a continued customer. Well, Jason is the Epic Outdoors winner, but we kind of have a funny story with this, and then I'll stop talking. The first guy that they called was from West Virginia, and I had a great conversation with him, and he asked a lot of questions about the hunt, and it turned out that he had other things going, and it was pretty short notice. And so I called Darr. I said, you're not going to believe it, but I think the first guy that won the hunt just turned it down. And sure enough, Adam said that the guy had couldn't come. And then the second guy they called actually had a dove hunt in Argentina. So Jason gets the call, number 3 in line, and he turns out to be the hunt winner and shoots a nice buck. And Seth and Hunter did a great job getting him on that deer, and he's a real nice kind of dark antlered, good eye guards, wide, nice, pretty looking, typical whitetail buck.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a gorgeous buck. Real green bases from rubbing on the ocotillos, and
real pretty.
Just a pretty buck.
And was he rutting around with does? When
He's rutting real good. When you found his does, and there he'd be, rutting over one side to the next, and then Seth climbed up a mountain, and obviously we just closed the deal how we always do,
Yeah.
Teamwork.
Triangulate.
Yep, exactly. Just surround them, and
We
eventually
actually took the does. He actually took the does from a decent buck that we had seen the day before.
Cool looking deer, huh?
Yeah, neat deer.
Talk a little bit, guys, about that day and that deer in particular. If I remember right, you guys kind of saw him early and kind of watched him all day, and he seemed like he was up and down. And talk about these deer when they're rutting, their typical pattern, and what you noticed the deer doing throughout the day until he got shot.
Well, I think first off, during the rut, a typical pattern is kind of a fallacy.
Yeah,
because they don't act like they do any other time of the year. Their home range goes from small to nomadic, like bighorn sheep.
And like Darr says, I can't wait till they get stupid.
Yeah,
they do. They do, but they just but they traveled so doggone much. And Hunter actually picked that buck up in the same location where he found that real gnarly, actually a big 2-point, but real gnarly up in there. He picked him up in that canyon running does and didn't stay up there very long. And they like to go high and they like to go fast. And he traveled and pushed that doe up there. They did bed for a little bit.
Yeah, they bed, and then you're like, we'll go make a move, and then 5 minutes later he sees his doe, or there they are. Off on their way.
I think what happened is he was bedded on that hillside with another little buck and the doe. I don't think that little buck was much of a threat to him, and then pretty soon a pretty good, real wide buck with a kind of a drop tine on it came over the top and got right in the midst of them, and they
kind of stirred the hornet's nest a bit.
Yeah, they faced off for a while, and both started running that doe, and pretty soon that bigger buck just took her up and over the top out of harm's way.
It's funny though, listening to you guys on the radio. I'm over there just dead as can be, nothing going on, and it's like we got deer up
like
all over.
There's, over there.
I mean, all day up and down.
Drop tines. And
it just shows you, I think the hot area or a hot doe or two,
doe.
And, that area was just on right over there.
I know after 2 days of that, my hunter looks over at me, and it'd been him and I the first 2 days, and he's like, what are Hunter and Seth doing tomorrow? Like, he was ready to cash me in quick for these two guys. Guys, it's been another great year. We had our first trip down here, and quite honestly, had Seth, you weren't able to make it, but we had kind of a tough hunt, kind of between Christmas and New Year's, and didn't hardly have any rutting activity, which we didn't expect, and we talked about that in the first podcast. But we've been really looking forward to this rut trip, and ironically, Darr, this ranch as well as the other ranch, they're two ranches that we hadn't hunted before, and we came down and scouted a bunch of ranches in the spring after the season last year, and that ranch and this ranch were two that we really thought there was going to be some real high-quality bucks. And, obviously we've got two down now so far, and, one in the mid-upper 90s and one, just over 100, and not seeing the quality that we're used to seeing on these rut hunts. And we've been talking about it, and then all of a sudden tonight, today, late in the afternoon, Seth glasses up, the type of buck that, we're all here for. I think it just goes to show how quick it can turn. Sure. But just want to get the feeling overall of this low density ranch. Darr, Hunter came on the scouting trip. I mean, kind of a deserty type of place and lower density, but we really thought we would see some high quality bucks. And there's 4 days left in the hunt, so we might pull it out. But just thoughts, guys.
Well, I think when you get the lower density, you really need to have the rut going to pull those bucks out from this ranch and other neighboring properties and that sort of thing. If they're not moving around very much, it makes it tough.
Yeah, I mean, movements, everything.
And, I mean, the buck you saw tonight, Seth, was by himself.
All by himself.
Yeah.
And he was traveling
And
looking.
And Hunter saw another 100-inch type buck tonight by himself traveling. So, to me, that says it's pre-rut, or they'd be locked up with a doe.
Or they've already bred and they're moving on to search for a new doe. I haven't seen real aggressive running and chasing. I've seen, nosing with does and kind of in and out. And you guys weigh in. I haven't seen just, super active where they're running 300-400 yards up and around all over the world and staying right on a doe's butt, and even multiple bucks chasing. So I think we still have some of that in our future here.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. The only buck I've seen really rutting hard was the one we shot, and
Which one, the first or the second one?
Jason's the second. Yeah. I mean, he was rutting good, but I think she's just hot.
Yeah.
Like me and Seth said, every day there was a new buck there. So I mean, just a hot doe. You find a hot doe though, and you can do some damage.
I wonder too, like on a lower density ranch, if the does don't cycle all the same because there's they got to travel so much to find does. Whereas if you had a bunch of does all together, will they cycle more at the same time because there's more
Good
bucks
point,
to service them? I mean,
I think on low density places too, you could potentially get more bucks traveling, whereas in a high density place they don't have to travel near as far, and you may have a group of does, you may have 8-10 bucks around it, where on lower density I think they got to walk and travel more to find. And hopefully that buck you spotted today isn't here today, gone tomorrow. Hopefully he's going to be in that basin, and maybe he'll find a few does. I hope he finds a hot doe that we can keep our eyes on.
I do too. If he'd had one tonight, he'd have stayed right there, and we'd have probably got him killed tonight. But
the good news is there was some deer around where he was, though. So,
and I think we've established that on this ranch. Yeah. That big mountain range on the north side of this ranch, or the east side of this ranch, is pretty much holding all the deer. For whatever reason.
Well, I think that's another good point, Seth, that, even down here in Mexico, contrary to popular belief, there are not deer around every tree. There are some ranches that have super high density, but even on the super high density places, deer are still pockety. Deer still have particular places, country, whether it be pastures or places that they do. Once you kind of figure out a pattern that, they're kind of hanging in this country or that country. I mean, some years they're up in the oaks and the acorns, and some years they're down in the ocotillos. And, part of it's kind of figuring out when you get to the ranch what's going on and what's happening.
Yeah, and we've been to ranches, too, that seems like they like to rut in a particular area where you always know you can go to that spot and probably turn up a good buck.
And look at that, how my dad killed his first big deer. You said, Hunter, you got to go to the rut hole.
Yeah. Place Darr and I.
Where'd I go? Where'd we kill a giant? You just knew. I mean, you knew it was a place where you could go. And
that was the first time I met you. I think you were about 15.
That's how we met.
How old are you now?
25, going on 26.
Ladies, he's 25, going on 26.
Right? Yeah. That's how we met.
He's going to get calls galore now.
You actually, you were...
He's dodging the question.
Yeah. You came and hunted for, a day, I think? And then you were on your way further south.
No, I think that's the ranch Darr and we had hunted previously, and then that's the same year that I think we were hunting somewhere down south.
It was Hermosillo.
It was. I knew you guys were going further down south, I
wanted to show these guys kind of where things were, and I remember wheeling Hunter and his dad up there, and just said, hey, we've seen good activity here. They seem to like to hang right above this water hole, and boom, your dad shot like a 125.
Oh, yeah. One of the best days ever. Yeah. Got to watch him tear up and kill his dream deer. So
yeah, I mean,
special thanks to you, and made a friendship out of the deal. So
yeah, and then you've been running with us ever since.
Now I'm here.
It's been fun. I can't do this podcast without having Seth on here, and Seth's got a pretty good story for the listeners out there. Seth is a highway patrolman and actually was shot multiple times in on duty. And Seth, it's an incredible story, and I'd love for you to share it here. I've heard it so many times; it gives me chills every time I hear it. But it's awesome to hear it from you.
I knew you were going to put me on the spot. But, yeah. And I say I guess I've dished out my fair share of bullets on animals and stuff, so I was due to take one or two. But,
I don't know. I don't want to go that far.
No, everything happened for a reason. But anyhow, yeah, you said earlier that we met in 2012. I want to say it was 2011.
Was it 11?
On my dad's sheep hunt, and in December, obviously. And so 9 months after that, in September of 2012. Anyhow, just working up around the Payson area, normal patrol up there. I made a traffic stop on a vehicle. I was actually working with a young officer named Rob Durango at the time, and he was on his first day solo. Just got off of field training and was working. So that means for the listeners, the first day that he could be in his vehicle and not have someone with him. Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I was working close by him, just keeping an eye on him and reading off some traffic stop to him. He had made a traffic stop about a mile up the road from me, and then I made a traffic stop on a white passenger car, just traveling 11 miles over the speed limit. So I pulled out with the intent to stopping them and just writing them a warning. And just south of Payson, I pulled the car over, and they stopped kind of blocking a public access roadway.
What time of night?
10:05.
So it's dark as black as coal.
Pretty black. Pretty dark. But anyhow, so he stopped to where he was blocking well, actually, he pulled into the emergency lane, but I was blocking the roadway, so I needed him to pull or move up. But I made a passenger side approach on the vehicle and stood at the window for a moment, and I could tell he was looking at the driver's side, probably waiting for me to come up, and just one subject and a dog in the car. I could tell that, but the windows were tinted, so couldn't really see what was going on in there. Anyhow, I illuminated my flashlight and rapped on the window, and I saw the subject turn real quick and started firing. Instantly knew he was shooting. The first shot went through the windshield and shattered the windshield into my face and cut my eyes and face up real bad. And I knew he'd fired 4 rounds. I don't know how, but maybe it's because all four of them hit me. I guess he was a good shot, but it's only from about 18 inches away. But he hit me all 4 of this sucker. Anyhow, so I spun and went back to my car. I was blinded. Went back to the rear tail out of my car to kind of get cover and concealment and reassess the situation. I was able to pull one eye open and look, and the subject was already leaving. And so I called it in on the radio, let dispatch know what was happening, knowing that Rob was up the road about a mile, and he saw the vehicle pass him, pulled in behind him, and started pursuit. It ended up being about a 40-mile pursuit, and subject got out and shot at the officers at the end of the pursuit, and then ultimately took his own life at the end. But anyhow, standing on the side of the road, I know I'd been hit, and started looking and trying to figure out what had happened. But the worst damage was to my left arm. I looked down and knew I had an arterial bleed. It was spraying like a garden hose. So my family and I would call it the sprinkler spot. I did a good impersonation of a sprinkler at that spot. So
yeah, it's amazing. But weren't you on the passenger side, and you said there was blood all the way on the driver's side because it was squirting out?
Yeah, it squirted all the way. Squirted all the way through the car. Filled up the passenger seat and floorboard, and down the outside of the car. So at that time, I knew I'd taken one in the back, but I figured my vest had stopped that one. But those are the only 2 I knew had hit me, and so I called it in. I waited for what I thought was several minutes. Listening to the radio transmission and going back, it was actually only 1 minute, but there was a vehicle that pulled up next to me, and I kind of waved them over to help, and they left. But
do you think that they saw you, or they just didn't know what was going on? They thought you were waving them by.
That's what I believe. They could obviously see me, but the lights were going. Everything was discombobbled, and I'm sure they thought I was just waving them on to leave. So they left. At that point, I realized I'm not going to make it if I wait here. I was only about 2 miles from the hospital, so I got in the car and drove to the hospital and walked in there and and got treatment and everything was good.
Wow. One question I would have for you is, did you feel the pain? Like, getting shot, I've always wondered, I mean, do you feel it, or is there adrenaline, or what do you remember?
Jay, I remember knowing, I felt the bullets hitting, and come to find out he had hit me all 4 times. I'd taken the one in the left arm that severed the artery. I took one through my right thigh, and one in my left lat that the vest stopped, and then the 4th round actually hit my spare magazine pouch and fired one of my 40s out. But I felt the impact, kind of just a dull thud, like somebody hitting you with a fist. Didn't hurt that I remember. I do remember standing at the side of my car and rocking back and forth, and I know, in the job, seeing people that are hurt real bad, they tend to rock. I don't know if it's a self-comforting thing or what it is, but I remember that, so I'm assuming it hurt at that point, but I don't remember that. But at the point where I, got to the patient hospital and then people started tending to me and taking over, then you kind of relax and let down your guard knowing somebody else is in control, and then it started hurting.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Yeah.
I remember Darr and I actually were in Unit 9, and it was raining a bunch. We were there for that elk hunt, and I remember we were in Darr's travel trailer. I don't remember the exact details. I just remember waking up that morning early, hearing about an officer shot out of northern Arizona. I'm trying to think if I heard it, where I heard it, on my news feed or something. And later that morning, I believe I called you.
You did.
And said, "Hey, Seth, I just heard about an officer that was shot. I'm hoping it's not you." And you're like, "Yeah, it was me." I'm like, "What the heck are you doing answering your phone, dude?"
I was laying in a bed with tubes and stuff coming out of me. What else was I going to do?
And, of course, being Seth, just sounded normal as can be. And yeah, that was me. I'm like, "Good night." Turn your phone off. And so that's, having the privilege to hear the 911 call, or I don't know if it was 911 or the dispatch or whatever.
That was the dispatch call.
Yeah. A dispatch when you're coming in, basically using the code and whatever, that officer's been shot, and just calm voice. It's knowing you, and then hearing that just gives you chills, because you can just hear how calm your voice is, how steady. And I mean, you had to have some serious visual issues with the glass in your eyes. I mean, how was that? I mean,
it was bad.
So I mean,
it was bad. Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, it happened close enough to Payson that you could get there. I mean, you literally could have bled to death.
Yeah, that was close.
Yeah,
It was real close.
And a funny part of the story, not that there's any part that is funny, but if there is a funny part,
you got to have humor in it.
I remember you saying, you'd called and told the Payson Hospital you were coming, and like you got there so fast that it was like kind of dark, and you expected like people to be outside. Didn't you just walk right in the?
Yeah, I pulled up to the actual ambulance bay, thinking that somebody would be waiting there, and there was nobody there. So I pulled forward to the ER entrance and tried to get out of my car, and that's when I realized something was wrong with my leg, and couldn't walk. So I stumbled in the front door, and then there's another funny part of the story if you want to find humor in it. But so I walked through the front, entering to the ER there, and at that point I couldn't stop the bleeding, couldn't hold it anymore. So I painted the wall as I went by and walked in, and there was a Hispanic family in there that had a daughter that was sick. They were camping, so they just brought her in to get checked. And when I walked in, the woman screamed, and the receptionist looked up at me, and I just said, "Ma'am, I've been shot." She said, "Oh, my gosh, have a seat."
Payson's finest.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure it got Western after that,
did.
tearing your clothes off.
It got Western, yeah.
Well, we're glad to have you here. We've had a great time with you last year, and we've had some great hunts, and we're glad to share it with you, and it's always fun. And, I think one thing, having that experience, I'll bet you appreciate every day a little more than you used to. Not that you didn't before, but it certainly puts things in perspective.
Oh, it really, really does, and it really does. And you've got a religious background, as do I, and I darn sure felt him that night. I almost met him.
Yeah.
And there's no sense rushing through life, because that day will come soon enough. So slow it down.
Mm-hmm. That's Good advice. Good advice. And you yourself, moving on to another subject, because I don't want to work that over too much. But you like archery deer hunting for Coues deer. You kind of have a niche, and you kind of like that. You enjoy that.
I do. I really enjoy it, and I live in a place where it's really convenient to hunt around Payson and those places to do it close to home. So I get to spend a lot of time out there doing that, and it's a different way of hunting them. Obviously, you can spot and stalk them too. I tend to do it out of tree stand, and have pretty good success at it.
You had said a couple days before you came down here, I think the moon this year was full on the 12th, and I think you said right there around the full moon on your cameras or visually you were seeing a lot of movement, deer really moving.
I did, and prior to that, I was actually worried about it, and we talked about that on the phone. I didn't know if I'd missed it, and I've got cameras out the whole time, so I've heard some people saying there was an early rut, and I didn't see much sign of it, but I did see a lot of scrapes scouting, and pretty soon the scrapes stopped getting hit, and things just shut down. Didn't look like anything was going to happen, and then that full moon, 5-6 days ago, they turned on.
Yeah.
What would you say advice to give someone that's going to set up a tree stand up in the pines, let's say, hunting Coues deer? I mean, where would you even begin to set one up?
It's funny because we talk down here how nomadic they go. They don't seem to do that quite as much up there. They still seem to have kind of a smaller home range. They'll move to where the does are at, but basically concentrate on the does. Find the does. On a good wet year, I like to go out after every storm, whether it be rain or snow. And I try to do it at about the 48-hour mark. That gives the deer a couple days to travel and hit an area. And I'll go out there and check for signs, check for tracks and scrapes, and obviously saddles are real good. Going through saddles, they tend to cross on either the left or right of the saddle. They don't seem to always go through the middle. They tend to go higher on one side or the other of them. So if you can find a good saddle that they're hitting and sit up there for a couple different days or something, you go in there when you don't think the deer are going to be moving and check the wind and figure out what the wind does in that saddle, and then figure out what side to possibly set up a
It's like we were talking too, though. 10-2 is gold.
That was
weird.
My next question. What time? You sitting at first light, or
I do, and I have for years, and I used to sit till like 11 or 12, and then get down, and I'd have a lot of activity, around 10 to 11, and man, I'd just get burned out, and I'd get down and come out, and it's a patience game. I mean, sitting at trees down is an absolute patience game. And but yeah, I'd get out of the stand at 11 o'clock, and I'd come back the next day to climb up in there, and I'd check the camera, and 30 minutes after I was gone, that buck came through. And
even August,
crazy.
though. I've killed all my deer 10-2 in August, blistering hot, and here they come.
And my brother-in-law, on a couple different occasions, he didn't seem to be a real early riser, and we used to kind of crucify him for that and say, why in the world, at 9 o'clock and you're just now heading out to the stand? He'd climb up in there at 10 o'clock, he'd call us and say, I'm done.
Oh, crazy.
Wow.
Dang brother-in-laws.
You ever make like mock scrapes or rattle or grunt or anything like that? Or
I've tried it all.
Yeah.
I've tried it all. That Coues whitetail, they make a lot of scrapes, but I don't think they frequent them as often as maybe the eastern whitetails do. They'll hit a ridge line and they'll scrape, and it almost seems to me like a buck will make a scrape, and then several other bucks will check that scrape and maybe refresh it, but not very often does the original buck come back through. Seems to be my experience, but anywhere that there are the scrapes, they're traveling those ridges, those saddles, and they're going to hit it. As far as mock scrapes and stuff, now in Arizona you cannot use cervid urine, so they're starting to come out with some synthetics and stuff. I don't know if they work or if they're any good or not, but rattling it can be productive, but I've rattled and I've had bucks come in, and to be honest, I don't know if they came to the rattling or if they just happened to be coming at the time. It just
Never really established a pattern.
I never have. I never have.
No. Well, guys, we've got a few more days left on this hunt. I know Seth's got to get back. Had a family, a death in the family, and it's got to get back. And we're sorry for that. We're gonna miss you.
Sorry, I have to
travel
leave early.
safe. Yeah, and maybe we can get the deal done tomorrow on that big buck. I know you can hunt till midday. And when you saw this buck, I mean, what was like your impression immediately? What hit you?
You know, we've looked at a lot of deer on this ranch. There are quite a few bucks, and we've killed, a couple right at the 100 mark, and we've looked at them and taken our time and evaluated them and tried to score them and made sure that the hunters are going to be happy with them, and which they are. Very happy with them, but this buck was, I don't know the distance on him. He was a half mile away or so when I saw him, but it's just that instantaneous. Big. Just a good big. No weaknesses for sure. Just a big buck.
That's great. Well, the reports are kind of coming in. I've been able to get a little bit of service here and there, and we've got a bunch of different guys hunting different properties. The Darr and I have leased, and bucks are starting to hit the ground, and good bucks. We got some other guys heading out here in the next few days, and always this mid-January time frame for us Coues deer hunters. It's a real special time, and it's just a great time. I guess I'll go around the table, and we got to get up in the morning, so we better conclude this. And you got any finishing thoughts? We'll start with you, Darr.
Start with me, huh?
You got anything to add?
Well, I'd just like to thank Seth for your service, too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
But I just hope we get to see this buck tomorrow.
I know.
That's what I hope.
Yeah. I think that'd be awesome.
That's what we all come down here for, is to see a buck like that.
In thinking about that, it's probably a good thing to talk about from a strategy standpoint. Seth, you think that yellow knob, if you could get to that one yellow knob, and maybe put Hunter up on the ridge where Seth was, and potentially Darr, are you thinking of going to that flat top ridge? Maybe.
I think so. I mean,
yeah. Try and circle the wagons a little bit in that country where the buck is, and see if we can turn them up.
And the wind's supposed to pick up tonight, and that won't be bad under these circumstances, because it may hunker him down and keep him right in there.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great point. Yeah, we've got a little bit of weather coming. We got wind blowing the storm in tomorrow, and then kind of rain Friday, Saturday. So we'll see how that shakes out. But yeah, we've got to drum up a couple more bucks here, and Seth, you got any parting thoughts?
I don't think so. I'm sure looking forward to tomorrow. I think we're going to find him, though.
Hunter.
Like Darr said, thank you for your service, buddy, and
Thanks, bud.
keep hammering and see if we can't stir him up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies, I'll give
That's where I'm at.
I'll give Hunter's cell phone number out at the end of the podcast. Yeah, guys, it's awesome. I love this time down here in Mexico. It seems like the four of us have had some great adventures, and I look forward to many more. And let's get after them. And just it's great to have a passion that we can enjoy. And these little deer or something, aren't they? I mean, they're just special, really special.
And it's nice to get to spend a little time together, even though it's 4:30 in the morning and 8 at night. But it's fun to hang out and talk, and
good times.
We talk quite a bit throughout the day, but we're sometimes miles apart. This morning was kind of a bust for us. Darr made a big hike up, and I forget the exact quote this morning, but Darr said something about putting all your eggs in one basket, as I drug 90% of the crew off, and he said, "It's great unless it's a turd in your basket." That's exactly what we had. We had a little bit of
sometimes you got to swing for the fences.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's like this property, high risk, high reward. Maybe it'll pay off, and I think that we have ranches that we can hunt year after year after year, and maybe sometimes we go to hunt new properties at a fault, but I think it's paid off a lot of times too when we've tried to hit new properties and catch those fresh properties where you've got those older bucks. And
Sure.
Unless you have an owner that really is into conservation and wanting to harvest very few deer on the property, these properties down here, like any others, can get overhunted. And
I just think the lions hammer these.
Yeah,
deer.
I mean, a lot of most ranches don't run any lion dogs at all, and they definitely hammer. We're in the we talked about that on the last podcast that a lot of predator control gets done in the States, and I think that's why some of our units you can see a bunch of deer.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So
Yeah.
all right, guys. Well, that concludes the podcast, and we're going to go to sleep. Thanks for listening. That's a wrap.
Darr didn't say
Don't drink
adios this time.
What?
Darr didn't say adios this
Did
time.
I say adios last time?
Don't drink the water bottles with the yellow-looking substance in it.
So I've been sitting in my ground blind. August. It's opening day of... No, it wasn't opening day. It's the 5th day. I had sat...
Wait, put the headset back on
No.
for this. Put the headset back on.
Yeah, do it, dude. You got
What, are you going to sugarcoat it? It's funny. So what? You were what? Sitting in your blind in August?
How did we even get on this subject anyways?
Welcome back.
Outtake.
So there's some diesel fuel in a water bottle here on the table that's yellow orange colored.
Depends how dehydrated you are.
Yeah, well, and it reminded me of a story a couple years ago. I had been archery Coues deer hunting in August. It's in the desert. It's 105 out, and you're sitting in a tent with 1 or 2 windows open all day. And it was about my 5th day. I had my urine bottle in there, which was a Gatorade bottle.
With the little hole or the big hole?
Oh, the big hole. The wide mouth.
Sure.
So, anyways, it was full. It was I want to say it was probably, I think it was about 11 o'clock, and I was just about to get a drink. I was really thirsty, and some deer came in, so I didn't, and I had to pee too. So, anyway, I was just about to pee. Some deer came in, some mule deer, and so they came and drank and moved off. And just about the time they were a safe distance away, I was, getting ready to go to the bathroom. Here comes some Coues deer bucks in, and they came and milled around. Anyways, they were there for probably 20 minutes while I ended up shooting one. And so as soon as I shot one, I was so thirsty, and I was, excited and what have you. I shoot the buck, he runs off, and I'm just so thirsty. So I grab my Gatorade, open the cap, take a big swig. Well, it wasn't the Gatorade.
Don't drink the pale ale, Stifler.
Yeah, instantly
did
started
you throw
throwing.
up
Oh
then?
yeah, instantly threw up and was just sick to my stomach. It was the
Protein.
grossest thing I've ever done.
Didn't do that little clicking noise like the officer on Dumb and Dumber.
I probably did.
Oh, that is Darr Colburn. You can
Yeah.
email him for.
So I get home and I get home with the buck, and I walk in the door and my wife's there, and she comes up to me and I'm like, "Do not give me a kiss." So she didn't, but yeah,
That's bad.
it was really bad.
Have you ever found miscellaneous water bottles around?
I have seen your water bottles laying around, Jay. Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening.